one. Alright, I prepared a lot for today. I hope we get through it. A lot of these are handouts. I'm going to give you in just a minute.
Now we'll stay till midnight.
I'm not so sure about that.
Why?
Because I have homework too. I have to do my homework. Okay, so yay. We are now entering into part 2. And what we're going to basically talk about today is we're going to talk about how we would, as teachers, create a rubric. And like the process of how we would, grade summaries, etc. So the first thing that we might consider having them do is have a self-review of whatever writing they brought. So that's the reason I asked you to take out your summary writing, because now what I would like for you to do is I'd like for you to look first to see if you see any instances of we, you, or are. So if you wouldn't mind, just look at your writing right now and see if there are any moments where you use any of those words. If you do, underline them. Then, what I'd like you to do is circle all the times you have used the word it.
Underline mine. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so now we're going to do another part of our personal editing, and I have found a really interesting form, or I think it's an interesting form, from K-12 Reader. So what I did with this was I tried to make sure that we had forms from everywhere. So we had forms for people who teach K through 12, so kindergarten through 12th grade, and then we also have seen previously forms for what it would look like if you teach in university. So I tried to get a little bit of everything. So this is, I would like you to take 5 minutes and go through 1 through 10. I'm passing out now the rubric, and you'll see that it is two-sided. So don't look at the other side just yet, that will be for later.
What about the summary?
On the summaries, that's okay. I very much appreciate that you did all of this, that's excellent. Good student.
The thing is that I changed the outline.
That's okay.
I don't know if it's okay. I want you to have a look at it.
Oh, well today we're not having looks at things here.
So I'll give you
So first, no, I'm not taking homework, my friend. You are going to have it, you are going to self-edit today, and then we will peer review, and then I might look at things. But I think that I hope, give you the freedom. I mean, I did intend to give you the freedom to kind of do what you want to. We did the outline, and that was for, once we had the outline, then you could do what you wanted to in terms of writing the summary with the outline, as long as you were more or less following the suggestions from the summary paper that I gave you last time. So the Glenn Rice paper, right? The author of that paper was Glenn Rice. So if you look at this, you'll see that there are, how many? 10 different things that we want to edit our papers for. So, the first one is just looking at that everything begins with a capital letter and ends with an appropriate punctuation mark, such as a period. and that there are no run-ons. So one thing that students like to do, and I also like to do this, is I like to attach things with periods where there doesn't need to be a period, where there needs to be, a comma. Where there doesn't need to be a comma, there needs to be a period. So sometimes I create run-ons and fragments through run-ons, especially in my first draft. So what you want to look for now is that each sentence is a thought, it's a complete thought, therefore a sentence, and not connected by commas. Number 3, all of my sentences are arranged in an order that makes sense to form let's say a well-organized paragraph. This is obviously for an essay, so we have to adapt it a little bit. I have clear topic sentences and supporting detail sentences. You also will have that. You'll have the clear thesis statement of what the writer was intending to say, and then you'll have the supporting information that that writer intended to say. Okay, the next, number 4, each of my paragraphs address only one topic. This one is not really relevant to us. What do you think?
So
No, it's
why
not obligatory. That's why we're going over it. So one of the things that I'm giving you a lot of resources today, but we can change them. You know, we're just using them as models. So maybe this one, not so useful for us.
So, but why not? Each paragraph has a topic sentence, so it's one micro topic.
Okay, but it says it addresses only one topic. In our summary may have, okay, I can see that. If you wrote, it depends on how many words you wrote. Because if you wrote a 80-word summary, that's one paragraph probably. So then this would not be meaningful to use. But if you had more than one paragraph, this is meaningful to use. And if you remember, we were not supposed to use more than 200 words for our summary. So do you have more than one paragraph, or do you have one paragraph in your summary?
In my actually I have 3 paragraphs, but I don't know for each.
For the 3, okay. So for you, this would be relevant. For other people, even within our group, maybe if they put only one paragraph as the summary, it would not be relevant.
I don't know how long should this summary.
50 words.
Well, no, it was 200 words, right? Remember last time on Glenn Rice's paper, it says how long the summary should be. And I said last time it should be no more than 200 words.
So it's about.
So yours is probably
so
about
it's
right.
About 195.
Then you're almost perfect. Great. Okay, so that is a good thing to bring up. If you have more than one paragraph, this works. If we only wrote a short amount and we have one paragraph, number 4 wouldn't really work. Number 5, I capitalize the names of people, places, titles, and specific things. At your level, obviously, this is not going to be a big issue because you're all teachers. But for a lot of students, they forget or they don't think about it because maybe it's not capitalized in Russian or Ukrainian. So you can see how this would be helpful for them in that context.
We can have problems with Mr. or Miss or Mrs. We don't know by name who is it, he or she, sometimes. What should we write in that case?
What do you mean?
Daniel. I'm not sure that it is man.
So
Okay,
the author?
well,
What should I ask?
Daniel is a man, but Danielle is not.
So what should I write? Mr. or Mrs.?
Well, the first thing that I would probably do if I were a student and I was unsure of the sex of the person that had that name, I would probably Google it.
And if I fail, if it isn't unknown person.
If it's something like rain or apple or word or something random, I would just say they.
Say about
Yeah.
one author. It is possible.
What else are you gonna do? You can't say he, you can't say she, so you would use they. The author, or I would say the author, states X, Y, and Z, and their argument is da-da-da-da. So you can fudge a little bit by using they, there, because it's obviously referring back to the author. This is not ideal, but if you don't know the sex of the person that you're writing about, it would be better to use something like that. Yeah.
And if we use they, should we add and in s to the verb?
I think it would depend on the sentence.
Because if we mean that it is a person, he or she, but we don't know, and we use they, it means that it's plurality, and should we express that grammatically?
It depends on the sentence, again, because you might start with the author, which is clearly one, so it wouldn't make sense to add the s, right? And then they also refers back to the author, so you would keep the same grammatical structure. So it depends on the sentence. Since they refers to one person in this context, you would leave it as if it were one person.
Okay.
That's a good question, though. Other questions?
So should we mention the name of the article in the summary? Like in his article, the name, the author argues that.
Yes, we should. If you remember in our sheet, who brought back the sheet from Glen Rice? Who brought back the sheet from Glen Rice? Thank you very much. So, what does Glen Rice tell us? Okay.
His article. The author and the name of the author.
So the article, so the title of the article, the author, the name of the author. And probably the date as well. Is the date in there?
Yes, there are.
Okay, also the date.
No, but we don't have it on the
If it's not on the paper, that's a very good point. If it's not on the paper, oftentimes, it's not here either. Okay, that's okay, but oftentimes you can see it, because this was off the internet. So we could have put the date there. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Sorry that there's no date.
So the name, the title of the article, and the date, and the title of the newspaper.
Yeah, so that should be standard, right? In a summary, you don't want to write a summary and then not identify what you're talking about, because that might be confusing, not only to you, like say 3 months later, you go back to the summary and you're like, I don't even remember what this was about. So you always want to have the title, the author, because this is information that you would need. Remember, we're writing summaries to help train us to write academic papers. In academic papers, we need to have all the reference material done.
But we need in exact author's words. And here we are supposed to paraphrase it.
But this is just practicing, so you don't need to worry about that just yet. Because one of the hardest things for students is summarizing. One of the easiest things for students, the author's words. Right? And so what we're doing right now, what the point of this is to help the students learn to summarize appropriately and to really connect with the material so that they can write a better paper in the future. I think you're getting ahead of us a little bit. I'm just giving this as an example of one of the first steps you would do with a student in terms of training them to write a paper. She's already on let's write the paper.
No, I want them to cite it.
Yes,
quote.
yes. So we're not there yet, because also remember this is not a, what did I call it last time? An annotated bibliography. In an annotated bibliography, you would have that. You would pull out the strengths and the weaknesses, and you would have some quotes that would support your hypothesis. But we are not doing that. We are doing a simple summary. Okay, so I use the dictionary and other reference to check my spelling, like Word. I used commas to separate words and phrases correctly. I used apostrophes correctly to form contractions or to show possession. the biggest problem is often like it's, you know. I use quotation marks around the direct words of speakers or around direct quotes used as evidence. This does not necessarily apply to us because of the summary. In Glenn Rice's paper, the ones that we're using as a model, he does allow the students to occasionally use quotes. But if you remember, when I gave you the direction for doing this assignment, I said don't do that. Okay, so this one doesn't really work for us. And the last, I used a thesaurus or other reference to replace overused words with words that add more interest to my writing. So one of the reasons I had you circle the word it, because it is one of the most commonly used words, and this activity, number 10, is a really, really good thing to do when you find that you have 200 words and like 10 of them are it. So you want to try to find a different way to say something, and I always think that it's helpful to teach students to use a thesaurus. So this would be for my students, when we go through this writing process, we obviously start with the annotation that we did, then they do the outline, and probably I might have them do the outline in small groups. After we have done an outline, we would do this practice again, and that I wouldn't control it. They would do it in small groups, and then we would compare and come up with another outline. Then the next step was obviously writing the first draft of their summary, and then using this to go through individually the first draft of the summary. So if you wouldn't mind just taking 2 minutes to go through all 10 of the different categories, if you will, and check it against your summary. If you don't have a summary,
You can check my summary because I'm looking back.
if you don't, it's too bad we don't have a projector. I would just project your summary onto the board.
I have it on my memory stick. So
Okay,
but
let's
I'm
do
not
it.
sure it's a good summary, but
It doesn't matter. It's the first
well,
draft.
I need your feedback. That's why. So
Excellent.
if everybody looks at it, so it will be an ideal summary.
All right. So those of you who brought theirs, go ahead and look at yours, because this is, the first thing for you. So, where is it?
Where's my summary?
Ah, perfect. Great. All right. So we have the outline. Here is the summary. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Let's make it a little tiny bit bigger. Okay. All right. So everyone in front of them has the little sheet, right? So how about you do the sheet? And then I'll ask you in 2 minutes, based on this summary, what comments you might have according to the sheet, okay? But if you have your own summary, use your summary. No? Oh, that's right, you were asking. That's right. Hard to straighten your neck. This is good.
So this is only one way to assess the summary, right?
This is the first step.
The first step.
This is the first step. This is what this is training students to do, is it's training them to be their own editor first. Because Because otherwise, maybe they're just writing everything and then turning it in and not even
But
thinking
there's
to go.
nothing here says about the sense.
That's
the
because
sense
these
is
are the
more-
most common errors, like simple errors that should be corrected before you turn your paper in for review, but oftentimes that students don't think about. So this is like, I was gonna make an allusion to potty training, but that's not the right way. This is like when you This is like when you ride a bike and you have to start with training wheels. These are the training wheels.
Mhm.
And after we do the training wheels, then we have the actual like rubrics. And you're actually grading it. This, for me, this process is not graded. This is just something the students have to do, and I may give them like a pass or a fail, just to know that they did the activity. And I wouldn't do this every single time. This is just when I'm introducing the concept of summary writing or of any writing, because these are fundamental errors that are commonly made.
Alright.
And here for you, in his article, comma, name of the article, comma, David so and so. That would be how you would put that.
I forgot about the name of the article.
Mhm.
Well, at first I thought about that, but then I decided that maybe it's not.
Necessary?
Yeah, it's not mandatory. Goddamn. But does it make sense when it's not so much? Because I didn't. I looked
Yeah,
at
it's
the
fine.
outline that we did last time, and then
Uh-huh.
I changed it a little
That's
bit because
fine.
I didn't know. I was not agree with some points from the.
Mhm.
And it's really very difficult article to annotate.
Mhm. Okay, so the good thing is I only see one it.
Yeah, it's in the second paragraph, the last sentence.
Mhm. That's good. So what did you say for number 1? Is that a tick or not? Yeah, it's a tick. Okay. Are all the sentences complete sentences?
Yes.
What about the second passage, the first sentence? Isn't that run-on?
Second
The
passage.
second passage, the first sentence.
It is a very long sentence.
Comparing, especially comparing with the second.
What I would probably do is rewrite it. I was told once by a teacher that a sentence should have no more than 17 words. That's like the max. Because otherwise it's too much for the reader to comprehend. But I say that it really depends on people's visual about. I think that I don't think that this is necessarily a run-on. There may be some commas missing, but I think that you could probably say that in a shorter way.
So what I
But-
wanted to say, if you go up to the outline, so I wanted to
Okay.
mention the findings of this
Right,
research.
and
So
this
there
is
were
not a
3
moment,
things.
this is not quite the moment to defend. Like, there's
Uh-huh.
nothing wrong with it. All I'm saying is that it could be shortened, there could be words that are taken out. And that's part of what this process allows us to see. That's why we're doing it. Because right now, you're very attached to what you wrote.
Yeah, I know. I
Right?
can't even assess it because
Exactly.
for me it seems everything is
Exactly.
okay. Just if you look
Exactly. So that's why we want to take ourselves and create a little detachment from the work by using this form, because it helps us to detach a little bit. It's the first stage of detachment. And then later you can revisit this and you can make it shorter and more concise, because it has all the elements, it's very good, but it could be small, a little bit shorter. That's fine. That's fine. He's like giving me the eye. He's
I
like,
want critical review of this.
okay.
Of this
And you will have it, but next week. Okay. Number 4. Each of my paragraphs addresses only one topic. Yeah?
I have only one.
That's fine. And it addresses one topic, right? There you go. You're all set. Okay, good. So I think number 5 is a check, right? All the names are capitalized. And you know what we could do here? Just a note to y'all. You could say, this I'm sure is a doctor. So I might say
I'm not sure
Dr.
it's
Keltner
not
and
doctor.
Dr. Cross.
Well, I'm not sure
They are
the
not
doctors,
mentioned.
at least in the original, they're
They're-
mentioned as their
So and
names.
so. Okay, what I might
Not-
do in that case is I might Google them and find out if they are, because clearly they have published research. So you would be able to locate the name of the research and then use doctor. Or,
Professor.
or
Professor.
professor. Because D, this is more like what we would do when we're writing the reference section at the end. And this is just something that we do in English. So if it's not doctor, professor, or even Mr. or Miss, depending on if you can figure out their first name.
I don't think it's
This
the
are their
right.
names. They're here. Teacher and
These are the
Michael.
names.
Mm-hmm.
But to be a doctor, you don't need just to write a publisher. So you
No,
need
I
to present
understand that.
your
That's why I
PhD or
said you
something.
need to research a little bit on the names.
We have to annotate the article, not get some information.
So all I'm saying, if this were me, is I would probably try to find out how to abbreviate instead of just using the first letter of the first word of their name. Because that's not a standard abbreviation in English. So if it means finding out they're a professor, so I might say Professor Kelsner and Professor Kraus, or Mr. or Mrs. or whomever. Just to stay stylistically within English.
He's
And
professor.
this way is impolite, yes?
Well, it's just awkward. It's not really impolite. This is the way that you reference stuff. So it comes at the end in the bibliography. When you say Kelsner, comma, D, period, and Cross, comma, M, period, 2011, name, title, all that kind of stuff.
So what I was trying to do is not to write it so long sentence, such long sentence. It says here he's a professor of psychology. But if you put professor of psychology, it's a long sentence. So when it says that psychological research, it means that he is an expert on that subject.
But we
And
don't
we
know that
just
he's a
mentioned his name.
professor. I think that's some key information that we should have. And maybe, one thing that you could do is find the abbreviation for professor.
Well,
Yeah, because you're still using space with the M and the D. So finding an abbreviation would be reasonable.
but even with professor, we will use D and M because these are their names. It's Dutcher and Michael. So we can put just professor, Dutcher.
I would say the whole name then. Because in an article, why wouldn't you say the whole name?
The sentence longer and longer, and this is more than 200 words. And we can also put the name of the university, which is also would be preferable here. So research of Keltner.
I think you have that
Dr.
enough psychological research, but if you're gonna put the names, you should put the names all the way.
By the way, in the rules of our academic writing, the first time we mention a scientist will have to give
The full name.
his full name. They need
Not
to get,
necessarily.
for example, yes.
Not
According to
necessarily.
the
You
APA
Yes,
manual,
that's
you do
necessary.
have
That's
to do that.
necessary.
The APA style of writing and as well as the MLA style of writing, whenever you first mention a new person, a new researcher, you have to give the full name. After that, in the paragraph, you can mention only their last name. But when you start a new paragraph, you have to have the first name again, because it's a new paragraph. So it's stylistically, and you can argue and disagree all you want, and that's okay. But for what I would like to see here is more, okay? Just find something to attach, Mr. Professor something.
And if he is professor, he must be PhD? Or not?
Most of the
In
time.
our country,
Here,
it is
but also
most of the
professor
time.
is not equal to doctor, and doctor is not equal to professor. So
Most of the time, but there are exceptions. Not a lot, but there are exceptions. So, can we get back to writing? Is that okay? All right. All right. So, I think we can see that this is obviously fine spelling. In most cases, commas were not really used, which is fine too. But there are some, and they're fine. Let's
so
see.
how about the third
Apostrophes?
paragraph? Discussing this issue, he quotes. Do we need comma here or not?
No, because you're referring back.
No?
Oh, discussing this issue. I don't think so. However, this, I might do a semicolon.
Semicolon?
Semicolon, however, comma. Extensive intergroup
Because
context help.
different
Mhm.
sense.
Okay, used apostrophes. People's, that looks okay. Alright, there were no quotation marks, and that's good. And there was no overuse of any particular words, so this sort, number 10 is not applicable.
There is one.
What?
Interpersonal attention and personal relations. It is used several times.
Right,
If
but
you
that's
look- but
key
this is the-
information. I'm thinking more like he argues, discusses, states. Like you wouldn't want to say discuss. But with key information, you want to make sure that it's accessible to the reader, so you keep the wording the same. Like for example, I don't know if, I think it might even be this presentation. Oh no, it's not this presentation. I was writing a presentation earlier for next week. And I used 3 different ways to refer to the same thing. But I realized I wasn't going to be here to explain it. So I went back and I re-edited my work. So I used your summary, instead of your paper, your writing, your this, your that. Because it's easier to understand like the key information. You don't need to like change it up. Okay. Alright, so we're actually done with the summary. Hello. Alright, so thanks for sharing that. That was good. The next thing that we're going to focus on is actually creating a rubric. So oftentimes before I actually give students the summary to write, I give them the rubric because I want them to know how they will be graded. But because we're doing this process differently and we're going to create these rubrics organically, if you will, based on the information that you have, you're going to create the rubric and we're going to develop one that we will use next week to grade our summaries together. Okay? So, I have an example on the next slide of a rubric that I will give you the place where I got it a little bit later, and this has some of the key information that you would have in a summary writing. So we can see that the first, and everyone knows how to use a rubric, maybe not. Number 4 is the best. So you get the highest number is the best score, and number 1 is not really working things out. On our rubrics that you will create in a few minutes, we also have 4, 1, and then I also always put a 0 or an A. Because even with identifies a detail but not the main idea, what if they didn't identify any detail? It's not fair to give them a detail when they didn't actually do it. So I always also like to give room for a not applicable or a 0, depending on how you want to define that. And so here you can see the actual areas that the teacher would be grading. We have the main idea, we have supporting details, we have the conclusion, and we have mechanics and grammar. And so this is a very general rubric. I'm sure you've seen a lot. Sometimes I do more details, sometimes I do less details. It just depends on what I want to focus on. And what I'd like to ask you is, based on the information that you have from the Glenn Rice piece of paper, for those of you who brought it back and can share, do we have any more of those copies? That's what I'm not sure. Do we have any more copies from last week? Sorry. Are these where they would be? It's Glenn Rice. It's the PDF file. Oh, I knew. Here. Perfect. Great. And I was looking for that this weekend. Okay, so here's one. Okay. Did you all have one? Did you need one? Here's one. Okay. This should be good for everyone, yeah? Okay. So, because you used this to craft your summary, we want to make sure that everything on this rubric is also present in the summary. And it's not. So, an example of this is the fact that one of the things that Glenn Rice does say is that you have to have the author, you have to have the title, you have to have the date, and what was the other one?
Citations.
And maybe where it comes from, right?
Source.
In the New York Times, Daniel so-and-so wrote an article called blah, 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 and that was published whenever. We won't need to know the published part. But this doesn't ask for that information. And just to make sure that my students have completed all of the information I'm trying to teach them, I might add another box here that might say something like details or article details or source. Good. And then if they had all of the aforementioned things, the name of the article, the source of the article, when the article was published, and who wrote it, then they would get 4 points. If they were missing, one, they would get 3. If they were missing 2, etc., etc. So I might add that. That's an example of something for me. If we take into account what we want to do with summary writing is missing from this rubric. Does that make sense? So what I'd like for you to do now is I would like for you to work in tables. And I would like your tables to kind of think about looking at Glenn Rice's, what we had you do. Please see if you can add any more categories that we might possibly use to help the students to complete all the expectations. Does that make sense? You all with me? Okay. And here I have a wonderful little form for you to fill out. So, you are I would like to collect one form from each table at the end of this. So if you wouldn't mind, using this for yourself, but then also having one form for me, okay?
Should we add to this?
Yes, please.
So this
And-
should be here, and we should add something.
Yeah, so what I would like the example I just gave you.
Alright.
What I'd like you to also do is to see, does this also fit? Can you add anything to these categories as well, or do you need to divide the categories into two? You don't need to fill out the entire form. Like, just, I'm thinking you're probably gonna add like 2 to 3. Maybe you won't add any. We'll see. But what I would like you to do, and the purpose of this activity, is just to analyze what the expectations are with the Glenn Rice, and then create a rubric based on those expectations that you would then use to grade students' summaries. And that I will use, to grade your summaries, even though I'm not really grading them.
Alright.
Okay. Let's go ahead and let's try 10 minutes, and if we don't complete it, we'll go to 15. So we'll start again at 4:50.
What will you add?
Oh, that's references in the text.
Reference?
References in the also nice.
So, it's the same as she said. So, not only just the reference to the author, but to the source. Let's start from the beginning. So, main idea. Anything to add? I would add there should be a thesis statement, which is not really the main idea. Thesis statement is the main idea.
They are the same. This is a thesis statement, which is what represents the main idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See?
I don't
It's
understand.
thesis.
The thesis statement, main idea,
Expresses
the
the
same?
main idea.
We discussed it last time.
Okay, we discussed that last time, and what we said is the thesis statement is the argument of the essay,
And the main idea
right? And the main ideas,
is it the problem that's
the main ideas, so in a 5-point essay, when we were talking about it, we had the thesis statement, then we had main ideas that supported the thesis statement. So these were the ideas that the author used to argue to support their argument. In a summary, it's difficult to use main ideas in thesis statement because the summary is so short that you really, you'll have the thesis statement, and then you'll have the key ideas, the main ideas that supported.
thesis statement? Because the first thing that we do when writing a summary, we look for a
Yeah.
thesis statement, not only
Well, that's a good change. I would agree with that.
First, we thought about adding thesis statement.
Yeah.
It would be better to change the main idea for the thesis statement. If the thesis statement is okay,
That sounds good. No, because what I like about that is it takes into account exactly what we talked about. So you're not letting outside influences come in for the rubric, and that's what's important. You want to make sure that whatever you're teaching, even if someone else might teach it differently, what you're teaching you support through your rubric. So what I said about thesis statements and main ideas do need to be written in the way that I said them as the teacher. So I would agree with that change.
so you see,
It's hard, you guys weren't there.
So let's change it to statement. And the rest is supporting details. Oh, this is so fun.
I don't even know it. How horrible is that? It's really good. No, I'm apartment number 25 and I live near Kiev. Choose building. They're reserved, right? I'm just going to make it like a normal student. It's great. There's two. Two came back, and it was another one who's back. Oh, yes, the structure. I know everything is reserved.
oh, this is statement. It is something from the article, but it is rephrased in another one. So, right, supporting details. Supporting details. Conclusion, right? Specific concluding statement. Mechanics and grammar. I would add to mechanics and grammar also vocabulary.
Like night
Because
classes.
mechanics is how words are.
Like 4 hours and 1 p.m.
I also add coherence. Mechanics.
Did you have a question?
I have a question. Is mechanics the same as not sequence? Coherence? Sequence? Or
They
just
don't-
mechanics is only the means of.
I think that to me, what mechanics means is basically like that it is 12-point font times New Roman, that it is that it looks like it should. And then you oftentimes grammar is tagged into mechanics. But in terms of what you just mentioned, that would be more I like the word coherent.
Coherence and
Or,
sequence and something.
Yeah, like sequence would be okay, that it makes, it's like logically ordered, is not the same thing as mechanics.
So we can ask one more box.
And then as you add, also think about what would it mean, right? So the thesis statement, what would a 4 be, what would a 3, what would a 2, what would a 1 be?
If it is 50,
Try.
Not
if it is 50,
Try. Besides, I sort of gave you 50.
how do we grade it? 4, 1, 2.
What have we decided? Mechanics, vocabulary, and grammar.
But if it is, are you sure? That's what I asked.
Yes, yes,
As she said, all this there are technical things that play a part. But well, if it were oral speech,
199,
but once it is written,
Is it real?
everybody looks at it, and it's important part. Mechanics.
I must have one at least.
Or what you can do with this particular one is say that level 4 would
Coherence and
have
sequence.
between this amount and this amount.
Yeah,
A level
sure.
would
That's
be
what-
between- that would be okay as well.
That's what we ask. The more words,
And
the
then the
better.
last box.
If it
Not
is,
necessarily.
if it is 50, 200
No,
limits.
within the limit.
Yes, if it is 51 or 199, which is what?
So
Which is
anything
4,
else?
3, or 2.
If it, none of that would, to me, none of that would matter, because first of all, I wouldn't have between 50 and 200. I would have probably between 150 and 200, or even maybe 250. And if students have between that, they just get full marks.
4. That's
They
all.
would get a 4.
Not 3 to
And
1.
if they had like 100 to 149, then they would get a 3.
Oh,
And so on and so on, going down.
Punish them for that, for exceeding the maybe
It,
0.
yeah, or even if they had
You can
more,
change
yeah,
it for
actually, leading
organization.
too.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Mhm.
Or
Why should teachers read all that stuff?
251 to 300.
Now
You know, so you have
so
limitations.
this is statement.
Also, people
So it's
they always think
probably
that
the same.
like, they write more, it's better, and it never is.
Unfortunately,
The more they write, the more
Mistakes
mistakes
we make. Well, and the less clear they get, because they want to say many things to make the same statement that they could make in one sentence.
Or rephrased.
Anyway,
Rephrase.
sorry, keep going.
Rephrase
you
and
have
what
a box.
else?
You shouldn't
Most
then you can fit squeeze into that box.
correct.
Yes, those are not my favorite examples.
So you can do it in 10 minutes. We need time to think about it.
You may have 5 more minutes.
No. Can you change? I have secret questions here.
Uh-huh.
So I don't want to hear them.
Oh.
Can we change sequence and coherence and right organization?
Yes.
Is this the same?
Um,
And then
it's not quite the same,
describing
but
each thing we can write that it is.
I think, to me, organization might be better than sequence and coherence. The reason for that is sequence implies that there's one specific order, but you already know because you changed the outline that there's not one specific order.
Let's number them. The first
So,
is source.
organization
Source.
captures coherence to me, but it doesn't necessarily.
We are talking about vocabulary.
So it's well
Yes,
organized.
but-
Yeah,
Yeah.
organization would be better than the two of these.
Must be source.
Thank you. That was my secret
This is first paragraph.
question.
The next article, doctor stated that
We don't have it
I I suggested it
Support
as the
details.
first number.
Supporting details. What else?
So
Earlier state to
number 8.
The floor,
Okay.
the name of the article,
Okay, everybody, we have 5 minutes left.
here, the name of the author.
For mechanics and cavalry.
About
And something about
the conclusion we
Change
should mention that we have some specific
our conclusion. But it's obvious. But it's obvious because this is not the summary, this is not the essence, it's a summary.
Yeah.
So it cannot be subjective at all. It's only the summary of the author's papers.
Choose new vocabulary.
Maybe don't. From 5 to 10, right?
You also can say here is support details are not, you shouldn't use I, we, and so on and so
Okay,
forth.
from 8 to 10,
So,
always. 10, new vocabulary. Just after the new.
Just the difference.
Может, соответствие еще вести этих синонимов.
So maybe it's 3 points, just half of the words are replaced. From 20% there, 10% replaced. Something like this.
Okay, let's continue. So, from 8 we will go to 10 the words here.
mechanics, vocabulary, and grammar. If we add vocabulary, so we should say something about vocabulary.
And once we
So there is no repetitions. or the same word is not repeated in each sentence. What do you think?
Have you rescued and you should actually use the same places where those meetings.
We should use new vocabulary, but we should convey the same ideas. So it says the summary is that we should rephrase everything. So, well, it's like
Because the synonyms can be
Personal,
exact.
personal, etc. Use
what's
synonyms.
your name? Nice, Sasha.
It means we use
We should
synonyms
mention
instead of
here how many times the phrase can be repeated. Like, if we repeat it 2 times, it's okay. If we repeat it 1 time, so it's okay. If we repeat it 5 times, so it's 1 point. Something like this. Avoid repetition. So
are you teaching
It depends on the article.
yeah,
If it's physics or
So about summary size, have you decided how many words?
so
That's right.
So a lot, I can say a lot of repetitions can be impossible, right? Here is just like 2, 3 repetitions. No, 2. Organization. So it's no sequence here. Or no sequence. Bad sequence. Poor sequence. Right. Poor sequence and coherence. Second is better sequence than here. Here is almost
It is a break in Ukraine as well.
references, as she says. Here is
No, 1 item missing. 2 items missing.
author, text, title, and source. One thing is missing. What's missing? 2 but we can't mention the name of also the text.
Okay, folks. I know that you're probably not finished, and you're probably going to be very upset that I'm asking for your attention again.